Hey, what is up? It's me, Curiousjoi, and I'm so excited to talk to you about Pictomancer because it is the class that I plan on switching over to during Dawntrail. Why? Because Final Fantasy VI is my love in my life. Before we get into the tooltips, let's talk about the basics that you see as soon as you equip Pictomancer. Instantly, you will see a canvas and a palette gauge. The canvas is where you paint your creature motifs, your weapon motifs, and your landscape motifs. And the palette gauge is where you store your white and black paint. When you do your 1, 2, 3 combo, you're automatically given white paint and you generate more palette gauge. In order to use black paint, you have to use your ability Subtractive Palette to be able to switch over to black paint. This will give you different abilities to use on your white paint and your black paint, such as black paint is common in black and your white paint is holy in white. Now that you got the intro basics, let's dive into the tooltips. From here on out, I'm going to be referring to Pictomancer as Picto due to interest of time. So let's start off with the Picto specific abilities first. First things first, we have Smudge, which may or may not be my favorite ability because you can slide your way out of any danger zone or into a lot of walls, whichever one you prefer. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, here is Subtractive Palette. This is the ability that you use to convert one stack of white paint into black paint. The creature motif. This is a tool that you place on your hotbar, but then it will automatically change when other items are ready to be painted. This also goes for the weapon motif as well as the landscape motif. Palm motif paints the movable palm. It's pretty straightforward. You can use this outside of battle instantly, but when you're in battle, it does have a cast time. Once you use Palm motif, the Living Muse turns into Palm Muse. The Palm Muse is an AoE ability. Once you complete the Palm requirements, then comes the Wing motif and Wing Muse. The Wing Muse is also an AoE ability. As soon as you completed all the requirements for the Moogle, Mog of the Aegis appears. This is when you finally bring your Moogle to life and hit all enemies nearby with a potency of 1100, and 50% less with all remaining enemies. Now that the Moogle is done, it's time to create another creature. The Claw motif and Claw Muse will now appear. And just like the Moogle abilities, the Claw Muse is also an AoE ability. Once the Claw requirements have been completed, you now have access to the Maw motif and the Fang Muse. The Fang Muse is another AoE ability, which also leads to be able to paint the Madine portrait. And just like when you created your Moogle painting, you now have the ability to create a Madine. This gives you access to the ability Retribution of the Madine, which is a huge AoE ability with the potency of 1300 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining. That pretty much sums up the creature motifs. Now over to the weapon motifs. The weapon motifs allows you to use the hammer motif, which gives you access to striking use. And the last canvas is your landscape motif, which gives you access to Starry Sky motif. Once you complete your landscape motif, you have access to Starry Muse. Basically, bring on the buffs. Starry Muse increases the damage dealt by self and nearby party members by 5%. It always reduces the cast time for anything under the Star Prism and Aether Hue by 25% while standing within the bounds of the Magitech landscape. It also grants Rainbow Bright a prime, consuming 5 stacks of Hyper Fantasia, and then it also allows Rainbow Drip to be cast immediately. By all means, pause if you want to read more, but this is such a great ability and it has a recast time of 120, so to me it's kind of like having another version of divination. Phew, well that sums up the Picto specific abilities, so let's talk about the DPS abilities, starting with the single target. In order to build your palette gauge, you have to have your 1, 2, 3 combo. Your 1, 2, 3 combo for your single target is Fire in red, Arrow in green, and Water in blue. When you have access to your black paint by using Subtractive Palette, you have access to a new 1, 2, 3 combo, Blizzard in cyan, Stone in yellow, and Thunder in magenta. Just like your single target abilities, your AoE abilities act similar. You have Fire 2 in red, Arrow 2 in green, and Water 2 in blue. When you're in white paint mode, you have access to Holy in White, which is another AoE ability. Again, this can only happen in white paint mode. When you're in black paint mode, you have access to your AoE abilities similar to how you have your single target ones. You have Blizzard 2 in cyan, Stone 2 in yellow, and Thunder 2 in magenta. And as soon as you turn that white paint into black paint using the Subtractive Palette, you have access to Comet in black. Comet in black is your black paint AoE ability. I talked about Rainbow Drip before because it's connected to Story Muse, but Rainbow Drip is a cast time of 3.90 seconds, and this is the one that grants you white paint and is able to be instant cast if you're under the Story Muse effect of Rainbow Bright. And one of the last AoE abilities is my favorite abilities, and that is the one that you are granted after you do your weapon motif and get the hammer. You have a 3-part combo with the hammer, which is great because it's instant, so you'll be able to deal a lot of damage while being very mobile. And last but not least, it's time for the Picto mitigation. Starting off with Tempura Coat. Tempura Coat creates a barrier around self that absorbs damage totaling 20% of maximum HP. Another thing about Tempura Coat is that it is a part of the new action change settings. This allows Tempura Coat to change into Tempura Grassa. Tempura Grassa creates a barrier around self and all nearby party members that absorbs damage totaling of 10% of maximum HP. And the very last Picto ability is Star Prism. This deals an expected damage of potency of 1300 for the first enemy and 50% less of all remaining enemies. It also restores HP of all party members and nearby targets with a cure potency of 400. This ability can only be executed while under the effect of Starstruck. That is the Starry Muse ability. But yeah, that is all your Picto tooltips. I hope I did a decent job. Will you be switching over to Picto this expansion, or will you be checking out Viper or sticking to your normal class? Either way, I cannot wait to see you all in Eorzea.